All right. Well, thank you all. Today is kind of an advice from fellows part 2. We held one of these in early November as well. And so I just wanted to start by letting you know that part 1, we answered a lot of these questions that we had posed kind of earlier in the fall. Some of these we're going to come back to today just because they're really common questions that you may still have. But a few of them, were a little more unique. And so if you have the same questions, either ask them again at the end or just know that there is a recording of that session that you're welcome to go back and watch. So today, these are the ones that John Paul and I are planning to answer. I guess I should stop and introduce myself and have John Paul introduce himself. But I'm Kristen Boggs. I'm the director of the Schweitzer Fellowship. John Paul, you want to say who you are?
Yeah, my name is Jean Paul. I'm a second-year medical student and a current Schweitzer Fellow.
And it looks like we have other medical, pharmacy, and public health students on today's call, which is great. So let's dig in. All right, so a couple of the questions that we have gotten recently are kind of boiled down to this bigger question of, do I qualify? So here are the parameters that we have in place. If you were a graduate student, if you were enrolled full or part-time through the spring 2022 semester, and if you can conduct your service project within Alabama, as well as if you can attend orientation, which is scheduled for May 1st. If you can answer all those yes, then you certainly qualify. I think some of the unique questions we've been getting recently are because of so many programs being online. I'm hearing from people who maybe are still living out of state and want to know, can they participate? So I'll be honest, we've never sort of had that happen in the past. But if you are a student at Samford or our UAB partner schools or Montevallo, I guess technically, yes, you can live anywhere else in the country and still participate. We are a nonprofit, though, that's dedicated to improving the health and well-being of people in Alabama. So that's why I said, service within Alabama. But I'm going to be talking with someone soon about sort of, whether or not you can even do that from a distance. And I think John Paul will share later sort of how he's had to adapt his program because of COVID. And I think it's certainly forced us to recognize that there are ways to do things virtually that can be just as effective. So, and then, yeah, but everything else I think is pretty straightforward in this question. In terms of, how should I narrow down my ideas? I'm going to turn it over to John Paul to answer more here about his experience and sort of how he started and kind of arrived at what he ultimately is doing.
Absolutely. So when thinking about your project, you have so many ideas racing through your head of, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, because I'm sure, just like many of you, I'm passionate about many things. And so narrowing it down can be difficult. But what I did were think about kind of three main things that are similarly listed on the screen. But I thought about, what population do I want to work with specifically? Do I want to work with, for me, it was students. I really like working with students. And so that was important for me. What am I passionate about? And then also, and kind of most importantly, is there actually a need for this in the community? And so that really helped me narrow it down to about two things. I was between, exercise with students as well as mentoring and career exposure with students. And one of the big things that really helped me narrow down was we kind of do some volunteering with different community partners to get a feel for what they're about. And my experience with my current community partner, which is the Birmingham Ed Foundation, was fantastic. They were so supportive. They were there for me, really. They didn't necessarily want me to, adopt a program they were doing. They wanted to help me kind of push my vision. And that was so important to me, and ultimately helping me decide that that was the project that I wanted to focus on because I knew I had the most support behind it, and I was also passionate about it, and I had found that there was a need for it as well.
Can you go ahead and tell people what it is? I'm sure they're wondering now, what is he doing?
Yeah, so my project, I am doing career exposure and mentoring for high school seniors and juniors in the Birmingham City schools, specifically at the healthcare academies at Parker and Jackson Olin and Carver High School. And so it's a essentially a Zoom program, but they get to hear from dentists, physicians, nurses, as well as get instructed on college application process, ACT studying, interview skills, things like that.
And so, as John Paul was alluding to, we want to make sure that we're addressing identified needs in the community, and we have a little bit of a structured way that we explore that once you become a fellow. And then we obviously want this to maybe connect to your own interest, whether it's past experiences you've had or future goals that you have for yourself. We actually had a session earlier. I believe it was in October. If you look at our YouTube page, you can find one that was titled like Build from Your Experiences. I've found that a lot of the most successful fellowship projects are ones where a fellow had an experience in high school or college or whatnot, and they were able to sort of draw from that, learning about, for instance, in that session, you'll hear from A.T. Helix, who talked about when she was in college and had to help some of her peers pursue mental health services, and just the difference that she saw in kind of the ease of getting mental health care and understanding what was going to happen versus physical health. And she created a project out of that. So take a look at that if you just want some inspiration about, kind of what exactly are my experiences and how can I pull from those. And I will just point out too that we have a lot more people because of COVID kind of keeping us at a distance, who are building capacity for an organization. So when I use that term capacity building, what I'm referring to is you may be helping an organization become better equipped to serve their clients. So your main focus may not be the clients themselves, but it may be about creating some kind of structure so that the organization can do that. And one of the best examples I can give is of one of our fellows last year, Heather Johnson, who helped Pathways create, space planning and personnel, hiring documents, and all these other kind of resources that were going to be necessary for them to open a child care center on site. So Heather worked really closely with the staff, knowing that ultimately the staff would turn around and be able to, use those resources. Here's some pictures of other projects that have happened. As you can see, there's a wide range of things dealing with oral health to mental health through arts expression. Jennifer used, and this is a great example too of someone who, kind of pulled from something that she enjoyed, which was reading, and particularly the Harry Potter books, to think about how that could be applicable for youth who are going through these kind of traumatic experiences in their lives. I had a question. This is a little bit off topic, but someone emailed me recently and asked for more examples of partner projects. So I will point out these two on the right. A partner project for ASF means that two people are working together on whatever kind of the project goal is. And they can be set up in one of two ways. One, you're kind of sharing some of the time responsibilities. And the other, maybe you say, hey, this project is bigger than one person can tackle, so we're both going to commit 200 full hours. But whichever approach you take, I guess the benefit that they oftentimes feel that they have is that they have someone else to lean on. And so for those who may be feeling a little overwhelmed with the idea, maybe you're saying, hey, John Paul, that's great that you wanted to kind of take an idea and run with it. I'm not sure if I'm right in that same boat. Maybe consider a partner project. So Newton Tinsley and William Gafford in the upper right worked with Unless You to develop some healthy habits among the participants at this school, which serves individuals with disabilities. They also trained the staff on how to respond in emergency situations and got them an AED. And then Josh and Allison worked with Birmingham AIDS Outreach to get a mobile testing unit up and running. So lots of great projects done as individuals or as partners. And so I'd just point you again back to our website if you want to get more project ideas and examples. We've got all of our former fellows listed there. All right, I'm going to turn it over to John Paul again to answer. This is another kind of recurring question. How do you balance school and work?
Yeah, so the 200 hours sounds very overwhelming when you see it at first. And it's not that it's easy, but it is broken up over a very long period of time. And so for me, the thing that has been most beneficial for balancing my school life and work has been planning and preparing ahead of time. So even during the summer, say for my project specifically, it happens during the school year. So over the summer, nothing was really happening with my project. That was a time for me to plan as much as possible. And a lot of those planning time, time spent at your computer, searching for curriculum, things like that, those go towards those 200 hours, and it, takes that down a lot. And so the hope is that when you're actually in classes or at work, that the project is essentially running itself. That's not to say that you won't reach, problems that you have to, sit down and fix, but you essentially want to try and prepare as much as possible so that when they do arise, that you're kind of ready for it. And one of the best things is that it's been very flexible. Obviously, with COVID, that was kind of unexpected. We didn't really know what was going to happen. A lot of us were panicking, and the fellowship is very flexible in allowing you to kind of work around, different roadblocks you may face. I've had to face a roadblock with communicating with the schools because a lot of those schools aren't in person. And so that's put a huge delay on a lot of my project. And yet I've still been able to find different things for me to continue meeting my hour requirements. And so it's definitely about just being able to adapt as well as trying to prepare as much in advance.
Yes, and I'll just echo a few of those points. So you mentioned it's spread out over a long length of time. So for the fellows applying this February, you will know by the end of February, 1st of March, whether or not you've been accepted. And what I'll try to do really quickly is to work with you to start identifying possible partners. And like John Paul said, sort of give you opportunities to shadow or volunteer so that you can feel out whether or not you think it'd be a good fit, but also get to know project participants and start to sort of form your project idea more fully. So when you think about, kind of spreading over 12 to 13 months, 4 hours per week is sort of what it breaks down to. So I think that's a really tangible number. And that's not to say that you have to spread it evenly, but, just that at least gives you kind of a quantifiable way to think about, is this manageable or not? I did have a question, and I'll go ahead and address that as well, about if you, for instance, were going to be doing something, or if you had been doing something this fall, or if you were going to start a volunteer experience in January, could those hours count? So technically, hours that you spend volunteering prior to the start of the fellowship wouldn't count towards the fellowship. But again, I just want to emphasize that it'll just be about a month lag time between applying and, starting to kind of get that experience and counting it towards your 200. So we've got a couple more questions coming in, one of which was about orientation on May 1st. So is it in person or on Zoom? Great question. So my kind of naive hopefulness was that it would be in person. I had also, had grand plans for our celebration of service in late April. I think I'm coming to realize that there may be more naivete than hope in, in those two scenarios. So we have not committed one way or the other, but the one thing I will say is that we are not going to gather in person until we sort of get the green light from the Jefferson County Department of Health. We've been looking to them for guidance, and we, won't do anything before it looks like we would be in line with what our school partners and site partners and health officials would suggest. So if we do have orientation or the celebration of service in person, I can tell you that I've been looking for outdoor venues, and we'll take all precautions in terms of, my assumption is that we will continue to wear masks through the summer and things of that nature. So if you, though, are trying to plan, like, do I need to be physically present in town, or can I be, at my home in Wisconsin? It's hard for me to say right now. And I think that's just going to be a decision we have to make closer to the time. But traditionally speaking, we've been in person, and that is one of the kind of required events, which is why we try to advertise it from the outset, just so people can protect that time. The other question asked is about how many fellows are accepted each year. So we have taken anywhere from 11 to 16. This upcoming class, we're looking closer to the 11 to 14 range, probably, 12-ish or more. And yeah. All right, let me see what's next, but keep the questions coming. That's great. Whoops. Let me see if I can get our screen share coming back up here too. All right, what will be different in 2021 was the next question. Okay, so this kind of ties into what we were just discussing in terms of how COVID has impacted what John Paul has experienced. And I'll ask him if he has any other things he wants to share about how he kind of pivoted his project. I'll ask him to share that as well. I anticipate that we will continue to meet virtually for, I don't know. Again, I feel like I'm kind of playing a guessing game at times, but I think one thing that COVID has taught us is that we can achieve our goals not only in person, but also virtually. And so it's made me think more creatively about our meeting structure for 2021 and beyond. And so right now, what I'm thinking is that we would try to gather on a quarterly basis in person, again, if kind of health allowed. And then our other meetings would be virtual. The other thing I've learned is that I need to make meetings shorter, because doing them online for 2.5 hours, which is what we always had traditionally done in person, is just, there's just this COVID, like virtual Zoom fatigue. So the other thing I'm kind of considering is splitting it up so that we have one time where it's more about learning and having guest speakers, and then maybe a separate time where people can optionally join to share what's happening in their project, get feedback from each other, and do some of that problem solving. So stay tuned. The one thing I can say is that I'm working on the schedule now, and as soon as we have fellows accepted, I do share our anticipated calendar and ask for any conflicts that you see, and then we'll make adjustments from there. So plan to start your project as socially distanced, and then when we get to the point where it feels like schools, sites, community is able to move to more in-person activities, then we'll certainly do so. The other good thing I will say that's been happening is that we've had a lot more interaction with chapters around the country. So John Paul got to have his mid-year retreat with the New Hampshire, Vermont chapter. Next month, we're meeting jointly with the New Orleans chapter, and Amari in conversations for next year's group as well. So I think it's given us a chance to really explore, like, what does this community look like nationally, and to help y'all build that network. even as fellows. All right, I've talked enough. John Paul, do you have anything to add about how your project changed since COVID?
Yeah, so like I kind of talked about before, my project switching to online was a very difficult transition, especially because now I'm, not able to go into the classroom. I'm basically, scheduling times with high school students outside of class time in which they have to go, on Zoom. And, that type of responsibility is not really something you experience till college, and these high school students are now going through it. And so it's been a very difficult transition. But also, one of the things you can kind of look forward to is there are a lot of things that you couldn't do in person that you can do through Zoom. For example, the level of career exposure I'm now able to provide these students is actually higher because many professors, many healthcare professionals couldn't actually take the time to go out to these high schools, and they couldn't visit, each individual high school. But now they can kind of tune into all the high schools at once from their workplace, and if possible, even show them around their workplace. And so that's kind of an experience that the people didn't get to, that the students didn't get to have before. And so looking for the positives and how you can adapt your project to be even better is going to be very useful, especially when you switch back to in person, because now you can take, the best things from online and the best things from, being face to face.
Yeah, that's great advice. All right. Well, let me see. I think we want to kind of open up the floor for questions from the audience too. Those are just some of the ones that we've typically had and that I've heard more recently. But what other questions do y'all have? And you can feel free to drop them in chat if you prefer that, or you can unmute and ask out loud. I will give some follow-up from one of the questions that was asked about how many fellows are accepted each year. A lot of times people ask that in the context of like, and how many apply? So if that's on your mind, I can just say that we've had a wide range year to year, anything from 19 to 54, which then may make you ask, okay, well, does everyone, like, what's the process? So just giving you a look ahead, our application deadline is February 1st, and then we offer interviews. There is kind of an initial screening phase. So last year we were only able to offer about half of applicants an interview, but in years prior, we really, value what an interview can tell us about someone. So, we try to offer as many interviews as we can, I guess is the takeaway there. So you would hear from us by February 8th to find out if you receive an interview. And then again, interviews will take place February 16th through 19th. Again, months ago, I'd reserved some physical spaces, but no, they will take place via Zoom this year. And then after that process completes, by the end of February is when we'll make decisions and notify everyone. So it takes about a month from beginning to end. Anything else on people's mind?
I can ask a question. This is Shan. This question is to John Paul. So what skills have you gained through this fellowship?
Absolutely. So I've definitely gained a lot. Let me think about some of the kind of the most important. Um, I'd say one of the ones that I even talked about most today was the ability to adapt, because I was stressing out early on in my project a lot because it was constantly changing. There was no constancy kind of whatsoever. And just this, I guess, gives you a little insight into the monthly meetings. But some of the monthly meetings are kind of there to help you. And it's funny how the thing you're struggling with in that exact moment is exactly what comes up in the monthly meeting on methods to, reduce your stress during COVID, or, how to adapt your project during this. And so they come in kind of right on time in that aspect, but it's definitely helped me be able to adapt. It's definitely helped me be able to take kind of a leadership role in my own project. This isn't something where you're just, putting 4 hours every week and then you're turning a blind eye. It is your project. And so, everything that's going on, you are aware of. You have to be able to multitask. And so I'd say those are, two of the main skills that have kind of been honed during this process.
Thank you.
And I can follow up on that and just say that John Paul referenced the monthly meetings. So we do have sort of some core competencies that we are trying to achieve each year. We go about it in different ways year to year, but they are things like understanding the impacts of social determinants of health, being able to, be successful in project planning, implementation, and evaluation. Self-care is something that we had planned to have a greater emphasis on this year. And I think it's been very timely because with everything going on in the world, I think everyone needs better self-care strategies. So that's something we've actually tried to do a little bit of every month. And I'm forgetting some of our others right off the top of the head, but things like communication skills are always important too. So those are sort of, the topics that we're trying to weave in throughout the year as well. Any other questions? Well, I will keep thinking. Feel free to keep dropping them in chat. I do have a few other things I can point out. So John Paul obviously is here sharing his advice today. Just want to give another plug for our YouTube channel where all of our prior sessions were held. Most of our sessions we've had, one or two fellows sharing their perspective. So you can check that out on YouTube. And then if I don't already have your contact information, I would love to collect that today, just your name and school, and another chance to kind of ask you what questions you have that I can be helpful to. So I've put a link here on the screen and I will drop this in the chat too so you can click on it. But essentially, if you will just share that with me, I will stay in contact and we'll make sure that as we get closer and closer to that February 1 deadline that you feel comfortable if you are planning to apply, that you're ready to do so. One thing I will say regarding the application, it is on our website, which let me jump over here and show you that. So our web address and all of our social media pages are listed here. On our website, there's an apply now section. I usually caution people, don't start the online application until you're ready to complete it because it's not savvy enough to save your answers as you go. There is, however, a link on that page that will allow you to download a Word document template of the application. So you can kind of, think about it, formulate your answers, and then come back when you're ready and fill that out. All right, any other questions? Okay, here's chat. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm going to stop our recording, and then if you would like, I'm happy to stick around and answer any other questions you might have. Oh, I'm about to put the wrong thinking. What's it? Interest. Okay, and there's the link as well. All right.